briefly do this introduction on the issue of the budget. It's very important to look at the budget in the proper perspective. You must understand the national budget or the fiscal is not a silver bullet to solve your economic problems. Yeah? What today's economic issues should be dealt with on a daily basis is actually the monetary policy aspect, and that is under the Bank Negara. Now, monetary policy deals with your inflation issues in particular, sets the interest rate, and the primary purpose is to make sure that there is liquidity in the market and to regulate the banking system. So far, we have not allowed the derivative markets to come in a big way. We haven't allowed the foreign funny instruments to come in, so we are not so volatile. And ZT is doing a reasonably good job. So what I want to say though is that the monetary policy, there's a monetary policy committee that is supposed to meet up once every month to sort out this kind of issues on inflation and also set the interest rates. But that is not independent. Globally, for the best developed countries, they have an independent monetary policy committee. In Malaysia, it's actually boils down to the cabinet, and actually, Najib will get the final say. Now, this is the very first budget where the government has created this fiscal policy office about 6 months ago, and they sat down and they worked out this new budget. That's why this budget is slightly different from the previous ones. They are making a concerted effort to cut subsidy this year. Yeah? But again, the fiscal policy office was an idea that we mooted about 2-3 years ago, and we continue to moot during the election. But we always called for an independent body, a bit like the budgetary Office for Budgetary Responsibility, the one that David Cameron introduced in UK. It's very important to bring economists who are independent, intellectuals who can then advise and check the government on how they set their budget. In this case, the Fiscal Policy Office is purely cabinet driven. It's driven by the Setiausaha Kerajaan SUKs, the Director Generals. So it's actually an in-house government body. I'll just get straight to where your money has gone. As just say, the budget is 264 billion. About 83%, not 80%, 83% of it goes to operating expenses, which means the running of government. And then the remaining 17% goes to development, which is to build bridges, build roads, to empower the public. So you can imagine now, 83% of all your money actually goes towards feeding the civil service, essentially, to run a government. Now, for a developed or semi-developing country like ours, the numbers are not too bad in that sense. But it should come down to about 75-25. That would be the ideal balance. So we're a bit off the balance. The other important thing to understand is even though it is 17% developmental expenses, the development expense section is only 17%. The fact is the government pursued many projects on the public-private partnerships. Yeah, so like MRT is off the budget. Yeah, Iskandar to many extent, other the basic infrastructure is off the budget as well. So there are many of these bodies doing that. So while this 17% seems low, if you actually add back this MRT and all these issues, it's actually quite reasonable. The government is not doing that bad of a job in terms of the balance. Now, I just want to point out to you some of the big ticket items that is in the budget. Now, the budget, this is probably my 4th year helping the party to craft the budget, advise Anwar, write his speech, so and so forth, and work with Kian Ming's partners, DAP and also PAS. It's always interesting to read the budget because it's a really thick book. And what you're doing there is you're just finding nuggets in there. So I'm just going to present you the basic nuggets so you know where your money went to. Salaries for civil servants represent 24% of the budget. So whatever it is, almost a quarter goes to just pure salaries. Yeah? And imagine the salaries of civil servants is bigger than the developmental budget for people. Okay? So keep that in perspective. Now, we know that supplies and services, bekalan and perkhidmatan. Supplies and services like buying water bottle, hiring consultants, using cars, things to support the civil servants, which are not salaries, non-salary items, carry out their policies, so and so forth. We know that it represents, from the operating side, you have to read the document, it's about 37 billion, which is about 14% of the national budget, goes into services and supplies. But from the developmental expenses area, 46 billion, we know roughly that 95% of all developmental expenses are actually supplies and services. It's to build schools and all those are supplies and services. So we group them together. we can see about 83 billion, the rough estimate of what they're spending on supplies and services, 83 billion, and that represents 31% of the national budget. Yeah. So on one hand, you got 25% for the workers, the salaries. You got another 31% for expenses that they use. So that balance, that is a great imbalance. You imagine, salaries in the West is like 3 or 4 times more than, you know, the supplies and services that you require. But in Malaysia, supplies and services is higher than the salaries of the civil servants. Now, why are we interested in supplies and services? Because supplies and services is where the markups happen. This is where all the corruption takes place. We propose in this budget to cut supplies and services by 10%. That will save us 83 billion. You cut 10%, you'll save us 8.3 billion a year. Yeah? We know the corruption rate is about 20 to 30 billion a year. So if you work backwards, you calculate the supplies and services, you can find out that more or less 25% of supply and services are markups. Because while you hear all the stories about the clock, you know, $4,000, laptop 24,000, those are extreme cases. Most of the cases, the government, when they buy paper, they mark up 2-3%. Yeah, it's those big things they buy, Scorpion, you know, things that there's no yardstick to compare, where the markup can go up to 200-300%. But on average, corruption markup across the board, from my basic calculation, is about 24% a year. Yeah. So that is still substantial. It is still a lot of money if you think about it. Yeah, it represents close to somewhere close to about 20 billion, which is what we all estimate. Now, the other item that you have to consider, or at least have it in your mind, is the debt servicing level. The national debt is about 540 billion. There is also what we call off-balance sheet debt, which is where the government implicitly or explicitly guarantees. Explicit guarantee is where they say, like for 1 MDB, they raise $3 billion US. The government explicitly guarantees that debt. If 1 MDB collapses, government have to take up. You know, so it's basically guarantor lah. You know, I'm sure some of your friends will ask you to guarantee a car or whatever it is, right? The problem is this kind of guarantees is the government have a duty to make sure that these government bodies or Quangos or the government investment, Khazanah, whatever it is that take out all these bonds, do not collapse. So that it always hangs over you like a guarantor. Yeah? So we know that the government national debt servicing is 23 billion a year. 8.7 billion, 8.7% of your budget goes to just to service the debt. Some of them to repay back the principal amount, but majority is just to pay the 4% rate, 5% rate that they get from the banks. Another big number you must be aware of is the fuel subsidy, which is 22 billion, and that represents 8.3%, you know. And half of this fuel subsidy goes to IPPs and to big corporations. Now, when we look at the fiscal document, we know usually certain ministries will spend more than the rest. And the big usual suspects are like education. Yeah? Malaysia spent a staggering amount of 55 billion a year on education. 21% of the annual budget goes to education. One sector only. And you know, as you all know, everybody complains about education and the level of education. So this is a major problem that we face. Health is the second biggest one at 22 billion. Yeah, that's 8%. I must say that since becoming a member of parliament, I've been going to the General Hospital in KL. First, because they give me a VIP service, so it's quite good. I don't have to wait 3-4 hours. But generally, the health system is working quite well in Malaysia. Yeah, the poor are being taken care of. Even the queues are long and all this. So I think it's justifiable to spend 22 billion on that. Now, the other ones that usually people talk about is defense. You know, every country spend a lot of money on defense, even though Malaysia hasn't been in a war since what, the 1960s, like confrontation. Yeah, we still spend about 16 billion on defense. And then the Home Ministry, the police, yeah, the immigration and all this, we spend 13 billion. That's about 5% again. And then another big one is rural development, and they spend 10 billion. Rural development is very important. That's how UMNO controls the rural votes. They spend a hell of a lot of money in rural development, and most of it is discretionary. It's you know, it's for little projects here and there. We don't really know. Yeah. But the one that I really want to touch on a bit, because I know I got 15 minutes, I'll rush this through, is the Prime Minister Department. The Prime Minister Department sits on 16.4 billion. it's got a budget bigger than the defense budget, you imagine, you know? And he doesn't have a tank parked in front of his car, he doesn't have a submarine, you know? His budget is bigger than the defense budget. What we see he's doing is, he's trying to consolidate himself into a presidential system. It is very obvious. From the budget, you can see what these guys are trying to do. In the traditional sense, a prime minister shouldn't have a budget bigger than the finance ministry. Yeah? In Malaysian context, about 4 billion plus. So the prime minister budget should be about 4 billion plus. Yeah? Because they don't run anything. They don't run any real service other than, you know, getting all the ministers together, checking up on them, and so on and so forth. But Najib has made this into a super art, and he's got 16 billion. And we can see his staff ratio is quite small. He's got his staff salary is about 1.2 billion only. Yeah? But he's spending 4.5 billion, 4.6 billion on supplies and services. That means for every $1 he spent on his staffing, he's spending $4 on the, you know, T-packs and whatever he need to buy to keep his office running. 4 times more than the salary. So by using this ratio analysis of salary to the spending, to supplies and services, you can see and analyze where the big corruption is taking place. Let me give you a quick comparison. Home Office, you know, Home Office means police lah. Police salary 4.5 billion. Yeah? No, 7.5 billion police salaries. But the police equipment to buy the guns, the cars, all this, only 4.5 billion. So it's a ratio of 2 to 1. You know? I mean, that is the normal one. Yeah? For example, another normal is like school, teachers, you got to pay salary. Teacher salary, 30 billion. Supplies and services, 20 billion. Supplies and services always smaller than the salary. Yeah? Health, another normal one, is 11 billion of salaries to pay doctors, nurses. 9 billion of buying medical equipment. Yeah, and medical equipment is expensive. So you imagine, Prime Minister Department, 1 billion of salary, 4.5 billion of spending on supplies and services. What is this guy buying? You know, 4 times more than what his salary, the salary they're paying. Yeah? And we see this kind of crazy ratio in also rural development. So that's why, by analyzing all this, 5 minutes.
We have 1 minute left.
1 minute. Okay. So, yeah, okay. So I'm just rushing through lah. So from there you can analyze where the major problems is. I'll just wrap it up very quickly. This is probably my shortest speech ever. Okay. Yeah. So this budget, they managed to bring down the deficit from 4 to 3.5% this year. Okay. Now this is a major improvement by the government. But how did they bring this down? This is the big question. They brought it down by slashing the subsidy budget. When you slash subsidy, you're really hurting the poor. Yeah? They're slashing subsidy across the board by 7.3 billion subsidy. You know, sugar, cooking oil, petrol prices. Every 6 months you get a rise in petrol prices. Your electricity bill is going to go up again. The government is committed to slash subsidy, which is a good move to some extent, because it's good economics to do so. But where is the fairness in it? Why cut the subsidy, and when the government themselves don't cut their budget? The operation of the civil servants still actually increased by $1 billion. They should cut 7.3 billion from the government budget itself, and they can easily do it through the supplies and services. As I showed you earlier, 83 billion of supply and services, knock out 10% on that is 8.3 billion. You know, we know corruption level is 24%, 25%. If they really want to do something, they can. But this is the thing. The government is insisting that the poor pays for it, people who are used to the subsidy, you know, and they're going in a dramatic manner. We would have done a different thing. We would have done like 3 billion cut and cut 3-4 billion from the government side to achieve the 7 billion that we need to do. Yeah? And slowly, progressively do it. So I think we're going to see very interesting years coming up. The GST is coming, as you know. Inflation will be a big factor in 2016. You know, so I don't have much to advise you all. Keep supporting us. We'll do our best in Parliament to fight all these issues and to expose to you. But the important thing is, come 2015 first quarter, go shopping first before GST kick in. Thank you so much.